Hey everyone, welcome back to my urban homestead. So today I'm going to break down the top 5 most frequently made mistakes with seed starting and solutions to help you grow the best plants possible. If you're like me and you are starting your plants from seed, lots of things can go wrong. Maybe your plants started out great and then all of a sudden they just up and died. It might be that your seeds just never sprouted, or things did sprout, but they came up super long and thin, bending over. There are so many things that can go wrong with seed starting. I've made all of these mistakes at least one time. Mistake number 1 is not having enough light. You may think, oh, it's a sunny room, I've got great sunlight coming in the window, I'll just start my seeds on the windowsill. And you will find that your seeds are going to be leggy. They're going to be tall, thin, and leaning a bit towards the light. So I want to share a problem that I came across. You can see I've got seed starting lights here, but you could still have leggy plants even with seed starting lights. Now I got these awesome kits from Greenstock, and you see that there's a dome on it. And I made the mistake of not checking every day what was under that dome. And let me show you. Let me show you what I found out when I did finally pull the dome up. So you can see how long these tomato seedlings are. I'm going to be repotting them. Thankfully, they're tomato seedlings. And the stems of tomato seedlings, you can probably see potentially some tiny little hairs. They can grow roots from their stems. I'm just going to replant them further down into the soil so that roots can form and they won't be so leggy. So to avoid leggy plants, you've got to use the right light. If you want to make sure to have enough light, you can get LED grow lights. They are not expensive. I got these on sale last year. If you've seen any of my videos already, you know I love a good sale and I like to get things when they're on sale. So I got 6 LED lights last year and they were pretty inexpensive. I'm gonna put 3 on each level. Right now I just have 2. So the first thing is to get some good lights. You don't have to spend hundreds of dollars. You can spend 20 bucks and get decent lights on Amazon. The next thing is keeping the lights 2 to 3 inches above your plants. You don't want the lights super far away from the plants because they will get leggy trying to reach the light. Another thing to do is be sure to keep your lights on the plants for 12 to 16 hours a day. They really do need that much light to make sure they grow well. And if you don't have lights and all you've got is a window, I get it, totally get it. Then you want to rotate your trays every day so that the plants don't go and veer toward the window and toward the light. You want to switch the direction every day so that your plants do not start leaning over. All right, so that is mistake number 1, not enough light or the wrong kind of light, and some suggestions on how to fix it. So the second mistake is overwatering. I unfortunately don't have anything to show you on that one. I did really well this time around on watering well. But you can definitely overwater. And when you overwater, you're going to find that you're going to have more likelihood of algae growing on top of your soil. You're going to deal with dampening off. This happened to me last year. I had okra that I was growing and they were fine. They looked perfect. And then one day I went out and the bottom of the okra plant, right at the soil level, just kind of tipped over. It got super narrow and just fell over and it died. And that's called dampening off. So it's a fungal disease. When there's too much water, it will create fungus, which attacks the stem of the plant and it kills them. So you do not want to overwater. Overwatering also creates weaker roots, because the roots just don't have a chance to dry out. And it could also help to bring fungus gnats into your grow space, and nobody wants fungus gnats. You can see I've got these little stickers here in case we've got a few spread around to ensure that we don't get a fungus gnat infestation. So prevention is where you start. Be sure that you're watering from below. So I lift up the tray and I water from below, not on top. And that keeps the soil moisture even and avoids dampening off. So not only do I water from below, but I also make sure to let it dry out a little bit before you water again. And you could tell the difference when you lift up a seeds tray and it's freshly watered, it's heavier. And so you let it dry out a little bit before you water it the next time. You also don't want the trays to sit in water. Right now, the trays themselves are dry. You don't want them sitting in water because it will weaken the roots. So you want to ensure that you are pouring out any excess water after you water them. Mistake number 3 is starting your seeds at the wrong time. A great thing about these seed packets is that at the back, they tell you when you should be sowing your seeds. For many of them, they tell you when to sow outdoors or indoors. And so I've got marigolds here. These are Racina marigolds. I'm growing these for medicinal use. So I'm gonna make salves with them. I cannot wait. And it tells you cold climates, when to sow outside, 2 to 4 weeks before your average last frost. When to sow inside, 4 to 6 weeks before your average last frost date. The seed packet is going to tell you exactly how to sow your seeds and when to sow your seeds. It's really important. For this one, Scotch bonnet peppers, it says start indoors 8 weeks before transplant date. So my transplant date is around April. And so I've already put the seeds in. You want to make sure that you know when your transplant date is, when your last frost date is, because you need those dates to know when to sow your seeds. If you start your seeds too early, you're going to end up with super large plants that are going to start to be stressed because their pots are not going to be big enough for them. And you might just run out of room because most of us only have limited amount of space for all these plants, right? If you start them too late, you're going to get tiny plants by the time you're going to put them outside. And so they're just not going to be developed enough to give you a really good harvest. So you really want to keep track of your last frost date and your transplant date. Transplant date is when you plan to bring them outside to plant them out. And you want to keep track of those, put them on a calendar, put a reminder on your phone, whatever's going to support you so that you can plan backwards and know when to start your seeds. If you're wondering, how do I know when my last frost date is? You can find out. You can put your zip code in, do a Google search, put your zip code and say last frost date, and it will tell you. And so when you have your last frost date, you plan backwards and you say, hey, if my last frost date is April 1st, and for these calendula, if I'm gonna sow them indoors, I need to sow them indoors 4 to 6 weeks before my last frost date. Look at April 1st on the calendar and count up 4 to 6 weeks, and that will tell you when to sow them. Mistake number 4 is using the wrong soil. Folks will use potting soil because we have it in abundance. I right now have bags of potting soil outside ready to be used, but potting soil is not what you want for sowing seeds. I have some extra seed starting mix here. This is cocoa coir and vermiculite. What's great about this is that it's very light and loose. It's nice and fluffy. It's not like potting soil that is very dense. You want a light mix to start your seeds. I made the seed starting mix myself with cocoa coir bricks and vermiculite, and I'll share at the end, I'll put a link to my video on how I set everything up. You can do it yourself If you know you're going to be starting seeds on the regular and it just makes sense financially, you can definitely put in the investment up front, purchase your coco coir and your vermiculite and do it yourself. Or you can just go out and buy a small bag of seed starting mix at your local nursery and do it that way. You want to make sure that you're using the right seed starting medium. When you have heavy soil, you tend to not have a good germination. You get compacted roots because they just can't spread out because the soil is so dense. And you'll also oftentimes get mold. So seed starting mix is the way to go. The last mistake is to not harden off your plants. Now, obviously these have just started out, right? These are Scotch bonnet pepper plants. Right now I've got 5, 6 in here. They didn't all germinate, but I'm still calling this a win because I've never done this before. So I'm so proud of myself. But when these plants get large enough and it's time to bring them outside, you're not just gonna bring them outside and let them stay out there all day long. They've been pretty much babied in here. They're gonna be chilling in a temperature controlled space, and then to just put them out in the wild, of your garden, they won't make it. So hardening off is really important. And even before the hardening off, one thing I will be doing is adding a fan here just to have air circulation, and it strengthens the stems because a fan sort of mimics the wind and they'll, blow back and forth. The stems will get stronger. And that's a great thing to do even before it's time to bring them outside. And when it is time to bring them out, you're going to bring them out just for a couple of hours a day. You're not going to put them in really bright, direct sunlight. You're going to put them a little bit in the shade at first. Bring them out for a few hours. Then you bring them back in. Then the next day you bring them out. Maybe you put them in the sun for a little bit and put them back in the shade for a few hours. Bring them back in. And you continue to do that and expose them more and more to the elements over the period of like a week until they're really ready to be out there full time. But you want to harden off your plants. The worst thing that could happen is that you take all this time, you put forth all this effort to grow from seed, and then you bring them outside and you just leave them out there and they just don't make it. We don't want to do that. We want to protect the investment that we've made. So remember, when you bring them outside the first time, they've really never experienced sunlight or wind or temperature changes. They've never experienced any of that. And hardening off is a way to little by little get them accustomed to those 3 things: the sunlight, the wind, the fluctuation in temperatures. So be sure to do that. So to recap, the top 5 seed starting mistakes. The first one is not having enough light or using the wrong light. The second is overwatering. The third is starting too early or too late. The fourth is using the wrong soil. And the fifth is not hardening your plants off when you bring them outside. So let me know, which of these have you done? If you're like me, you've done all of them. But maybe there's one that's really the sticker for you. Let me know which mistake is the one that has tripped you up the most. I'm gonna put a link up above on my video on how I set up my seed starting area. Feel free to watch that. I hope you're having a great time in your garden. Happy gardening, everyone. See you in the next video.